For starters, I'm just gonna say the Celtics series was better than the Mavericks Wolves series. The Pacers were a better matchup. They showed up. They performed better. Despite the Halliburton injury, they still kept those games tight, except for Game Two. The Timberwolves were abysmal in that series. They were embarrassing. After all the kind of shit they were talking in the first two rounds, they completely disappeared. Karl Anthony Towns couldn't shoot for shit and couldn't get to the rim. Their offense just wasn't clicking in that series. So I think the Pacers definitely were the better match for the Celtics than the Wolves were for the Mavericks. They were the second ranked offense in NBA history this year. They had the best offense in this playoff series or this playoff year so far. And the Celtics kind of just took care of business. They showed them that they can win games in the clutch. They can come back from down 20 points, and they proved that they are battle tested and ready for this finals.
Well, I'll pick off of that, and I'll say I agree because that's really the only series I watched. Because when the Timberwolves played, the Rangers were playing too, so I wasn't really watching that. But it was really good. Tino was right last time. They were not going to blow out the Pacers. You did say it was going to go to 6 games, but it could have, honestly. Every game was a nail biter. I think that was like the best competition the Celtics had all postseason. And now, like, I don't know about the finals now for the Celtics. I'm not saying it's going to be a sweep or in 5 now. I'm less confident in Boston.
It was without a doubt the best sweep I've ever watched. Despite if you look at it face value and say, okay, Indiana got swept, casuals and people who didn't watch the series are going to go, oh, well, Boston swept them. What was the big deal? Indiana very easily could have been up 3-1 going into a game 5 back in Boston without a doubt. Because the first game, if they figured out how to fucking inbound a basketball and if Halliburton didn't dribble the ball, I know it's ifs and coulda, woulda, shoulda, whatever, but it's genuine stuff that if Indiana could, if it's a young team, but if they could have inbounded the ball properly, they would have had game 1 in Boston. Talk about game 2, Boston took care of business. I think that was the game Brown had 40, if I'm not mistaken, or was it game 1?
Yeah, they won by like 15.
Yeah, game 2, Brown had 40, won by 15. So that game, they took care of business. Game 3 and 4, again, no Halliburton. Andrew Nembhard stepped the fuck up. A guy out of Gonzaga, he transferred from Florida to Gonzaga, and he showed that going forward, he is a viable backup point guard for Indiana, and arguably, I could probably see him going to about half the NBA teams right now and being their starting point guard. Nembhard showed that he's a great player. I will say that Minnesota-Dallas, I think, still was entertaining because a lot of the 3 of the 4 games did come down to the wire. In a game 5, obviously Dallas killed them. Game 4, Minnesota won handedly. The first 3 games, though, were all decided by, I think, a total of 13 games. It was 4 in the first 2 combined and then 9 points in game 3. So it was a close series up until the last 2 games. But I'll agree with you guys that for me, I got more into it and got more hyped watching Boston and Indiana because those games were just so back and forth. The moments that we had Tatum, that behind the back pass to Horford, Tatum is not my favorite player, and I have things I like to say about him, but that's going to go down as one of the greatest plays in Eastern Conference playoff history. To be down in that game, the comeback they had down 18, make that pass to Al Horford, phenomenal. So I'm going to go with you guys. Boston, Indiana definitely was the better of the 2 series.
You're also forgetting about the clutch steal by Drew Holiday to end game 3, I believe. That was,
yeah.
I mean, that was an incredible moment right there. And what I liked about the Boston series is that, like, obviously when you think of the Boston Celtics, you think about, obviously, Jason Tatum. You're obviously thinking about Jaylen Brown. But then you have Al Horford, who shot, I believe, 5 threes in game 2, I believe it was.
It was 7. It was 7 in game 3 also.
That was it, yeah. And then, Derek White with the game winner in game 4. Drew Holiday with incredible defense. So it's not one of the, and also obviously you can make the argument and say that they didn't have Kristaps Porzingis, but the thing is they have such great players around them that they have players that they can trust, and they don't have to force Jason Tatum to get 40 points to push them into the to the NBA Finals. You're not obviously Jaylen Brown, he had incredible. He deserves that Eastern Conference Finals in my personal opinion.
100%.
But they have a balanced team overall. It wasn't like a one-sided type of thing. And same thing with the Pacers. I mean, I honestly thought that I was right about the sweep, but I was expecting to be them being blown out in game 3 and 4 when Halliburton got hurt. But those 2 games still came down to the wire, and they still played very well at home that they're struggling with as well.
Nick, what did I say last time I came on the pod? I said Indiana. Oh, and you weren't here. I said Indiana as an overall team, I was saying this to Murdoch, and Murdoch was calling me crazy with because I was talking about TJ McConnell and the guys they have off the bench. Indiana in this playoffs had the best overall team, well-rounded, like considering everything of any team. Between Carlisle as the head coach, he's an NBA, he's a championship-winning head coach. The bench they have is by far the best one in the NBA this entire season. Indiana, while Boston is the better, they're more talented. Indiana is the most balanced team, and that's why I said it could go 7. And with how close the games were, it felt like it went 7. It didn't feel like it was a sweep by any means.
No, it definitely wasn't an easy series. They had to fight for those wins. Would I say they were the best team in the playoffs, like on paper? I think that's a bit of a stretch to say. I think their defense kind of lacks in some areas, and they were missing Benedict Mathurin the entire playoffs, which was a big loss for them. He's a big help.
That's fair.
But they're definitely a young team who's on the rise. They have tons of good pieces. It'll be interesting to see what they do with like Miles Turner moving forward. He kind of doesn't really fit the project. I could see him getting dealed this summer.
Yeah.
But I think that they're 1 or 2 pieces away from seriously contending. I think if they can fix that defense, because their offense is nothing to play with. Their offense is legit. It's one of the best we've ever seen in the league. With the defense, we've seen this script with the Houston Rockets before, where you give all you got on offense and then you kind of take off on defense. But you've seen against the Knicks series, you've seen in a few games where it was coming down to it. They were 6-point game with a couple of minutes left, and the Pacers just had no way to getting back into that game because they just can't get stops on the other end. Can they score whenever they want? Yes, but they can't get stops.
You also saw in that Knicks series, though, I know we got to move on to the next thing, but I know in the Knicks series, if you watch, the Knicks are a very physically defensive team, and that's because Tom Thibodeau is the coach of them, and that's his play style. That's the kind of environment and culture he builds for his team. Indiana was meeting them with physicality. I know Indiana, and it went 7 games. Knicks were hurt. I get all of that. But if you look at just what happened on the basketball court, Indiana, I think, personally, especially Aaron Nesmith, stepped up defensively when it mattered most against New York. And granted, yes, I know that Indiana, when you look at holistically for the whole year, they were one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, and I agree with you. But in terms of needing to defend when it mattered in the postseason, I think Indiana did that against the Knicks. Now, against Boston, different story. But the Celtics are the weapons they have are a little bit better than New York, you can argue holistically. But yeah. I think Indiana, as a overall well-balanced team going forward, they're not going to be somebody to mess with. They're going to be scary going forward.
Yeah, I like you giving Aaron Nesmith this credit. He was on the Celtics, didn't really find his footing on the team, kind of got dealed. I thought that was kind of his career over. He was going to just be a role player, maybe make it. But, he's kind of proven himself as being one of the better defenders in this league, and he's a serious role player.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I think that the Pacers, their future is pretty bright. I'm assuming that they're definitely going to give Pascal Siakam that big extension that he's been hoping for.
They better give him.
They're gonna 100% give it to him. They're definitely going to give it to him.
Yeah.
And then that bench of Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, and then you have Aaron Nesmith, who shot 100% from the field goal range in Game 7 against the Knicks. I mean, this team is special, and they're looking forward to it. And then obviously with Tyrese Halliburton, who's up and coming, but. Let's just move over to the Western Conference side and talk about a little bit with the Mavericks and the Timberwolves game. I know that Owen mentioned it a little bit, and then Tino mentioned that it's entertaining. But one thing that I do have to say is that I'm very excited to see Kyrie Irving back in the NBA Finals, and it's going to be against the Boston Celtics. I mean, we're hearing conversations already now that he said he does regret the way that he reacted the last time they were against the Celtics. And I know that, Boston fans are going to be going crazy. Owen's going to be at the game on Thursday, so he's going to be giving us moments to talk about. And it's going to be exciting to see because, we all know what Kyrie Irving can do in the NBA Finals. So I'm looking forward to the game.
Yeah. Me and my brother are heading up, flying out tomorrow.
That's fucking sick. That's
what was it, $800 a ticket?
Yeah, something like that.
Hey, listen, they're in the finals. It's worth
it. It's a once in a lifetime experience. I thought,
Absolutely.
22, don't pay rent or anything like that right now. Got to take advantage of the opportunity.
You got a good point there, yeah.
Head up to Boston for 2 days, go to the game. Why not? But I mean, I love the point you're bringing up Kyrie. It's the narratives surrounding this series are amazing. You have Kyrie versus Boston. You have Kristaps versus Dallas, which I didn't know it's much more than what we think it is. it's closer to being a Kyrie versus Boston situation with that than people really think. I'm seeing a lot of reports of the organization don't like him, the people of Dallas don't like him. So I mean, there is some sort of beef there, and then there's kind of just the Luka versus Tatum rivalry. I think they're the two faces of the league. Enough of the ant chatter. He had his time in the light, but we're being serious about who's actually going to be leading this league, winning MVPs, winning championships. That is Luka and Tatum, not SGA, not Ant, not Halliburton. It's those two. So I think it's perfect that one of these two are going to be getting their first ring this year. I personally think it's going to be Jason Tatum, but Luka is great. It's just when you look at the Celtics roster, just top down, they're better, in my opinion. And then the 1-2 punch, Jaylen Brown is a much better player than Kyrie Irving has been in the last 2-3 seasons. I think everyone can kind of agree with me there.
Yeah, you can. I mean, before I respond to that, I will say Karl-Anthony Towns is a fucking joke, because at least in this series he was a fucking joke. I believe it was going into game 4 or 5. I think it was within the first 3 or 4 games of the series. Towns was shooting 13.6% from 3 and 37.5% from 2. That's probably, I don't think you can really perform any worse as a former number 1 overall pick. You cannot perform any worse than that. And to see somebody who's called himself, what was it, the great one of the best or the best?
No, the greatest big man shooter
as a big man. Yeah, better than Dirk Nowitzki. It's cry me a river, dude. It's a fucking joke. Karl-Anthony Towns did not show up in any sense. He showed up in one game, and that was game 4 to extend the series. And then we're all happy saying, "Oh, don't let us get one." Yeah, and you got your asses kicked on your home floor in game 5. The game was over in the first quarter when Luka scored half their damn points.